Okay, so birds today. Let me just share the images. Right. So we're going to do a couple of things with the birds. Since we've done pencil sketching last month, I'd like to do one exercise in pencil sketching of a few of these birds. Quick sketches to get your hand moving and also to start seeing the proportions and textures and various parts of the bird, so that the one that we choose to then make, you are more familiar with all its nuances. So I've selected some just pretty birds for their color and texture. Some I know, some I don't know. This one I don't know what it is. This is just our regular sparrow. This is a male tragopan. This is, I don't know which raptor. And this is the female tragopan. So hopefully we can do the tragopans today. I think they're the state bird of Uttarakhand or something like that. And they have this is again, I think a group of, these are all pheasants, if I'm not mistaken. So they have a lot of impressive plumage. So we'll start off first with sketching the sparrow. Am I audible or have I?
Yeah. I can hear you.
You can hear me? All right. Okay. So I'm going to draw some proportions. Okay, just
Hi, Aditya, a few months ago, you had done birds in composition with, the berries and fruit.
Okay.
You had done something like that, right? So can we, incorporate some kind of composition also with the birds?
We could.
Some foliage.
Okay, so today I just wanted to focus on the bird itself because the whole composition will take a little longer. And maybe we can do that at another point. I'll tell you the reason also, because each of them needs to be tackled separately. So when we've done, I'll stop share. Yeah. So when we do plants and flowers and berries, we render them a separate way. And then we do birds, we render them a separate way. If we take the whole topic together, then without becoming familiar with how the proportions in a bird work, something goes off. So I can focus on this right now, and then maybe towards the end of the class, we could just try out a few pencil sketches of possible compositions. And I think we've done plenty of plants and flowers in the past. So we have to just then put the two together. That's how composite images or illustrations work in any case. All right. Because what happens with birds, I've found, is that in our minds, we see the bird differently, even when it's familiar. And then when we have to draw it, the proportions can go horribly off. And the only reason for that is because there are very few markers on a bird that give us, like, with a face, for example, you can use a grid and you can create a space for eyes, nose, mouth. But with maybe with animals also, because they have faces which we recognize and can work in the same grid. With birds, they have very few features that you can peg down in a proportion. So that sometimes makes either the body look very long or things become very fat, and all of it goes a little awry. So let's address that. And if we can finish it in time, then we will look at adding some composition. So even like the sparrow that we have, you can easily add something like a cherry blossom or something, a nice peach colored or pink colored flower to offset the brown. So we can try to do that. So first and foremost, I'd like to show you how you can create a close to accurate proportioning with birds. Like I said, there are very few markers to go by. But what we must rely on is our basic shapes of line, circles, square, triangles, all of that. So if we start off with the head of the bird, most of them have a head that fits in a circle, at least half of it. So that's the top and side can fit into some kind of circle. The moment we get that, we can then draw a grid within the circle. So no, don't make ovals because ovals need more information. You need to know how wide or how tall an oval needs to be. A circle is just a circle. Now, once you get this grid, a lot of things start becoming clearer. You have the eye at about half of the top. You have the throat coming a little left of half of the left hemisphere. And then similarly, you can create maybe more grids like this where you can get a direction for the beak, so on and so forth. Then from here, we can start drawing lines to give us a proportion of the angles of the bird's body. The back of the bird is aligned to about maybe 5 o'clock on the clock face. If this were the center of the clock, from half of the circle, you draw a line towards 5 o'clock. And then maybe from the center of the circle, you see another parallel line running through, that becomes the tail. And then you can use the same measure to see whether these angles match. So suddenly now you start getting at least the right angle for the bird when it's perched. Now, once this is done, we need to know how long we have to make these lines. We can't just make them endlessly. So use the dimensions of the circle. So if this is the length of the circle, we have one circle length, 2 and 3 circle lengths. So at least there is some objective measurement that we can use. And at halfway through, we have these 2 lines. So the front goes down a little bit, the back goes down a little bit at half of the middle measurement. Even if we have just so much, it's a great way to start our picture. So I'm going to share this image so that we can make a basic sketch and then proceed. Now the picture that we'll make are going to be small images of the bird. Don't make them too large. When sketching birds,
You share that image where you done the proportions?
yeah, I put it on the group.
Share it already.
Okay.
So when you're making a sketch of the bird, don't make it too large because then we have to furnish a lot of details. So make it just about this size. We can make 2 birds, one below the other also. So start off with a circle. Make a vertical and horizontal half. and then visually mark these lines. If you use a scale or something, it's not good enough. So if this is the center of your clock, you have 6 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. And then check if that 5 o'clock is the correct angle and visually verify it. Now take the measurement, maybe with a pencil or with a brush, and make a line that's 3 times long in the same angle as this 5 o'clock. So use the tools that you have handy. So you have 1, 2, and 3, and at this half level, you draw a horizontal line. So you start getting some proportions. The eye is going to be somewhere here above this point, and the beak is going to be somewhere here. Now, this is, like I keep saying, this is not the only way you will make proportions. You could come up with something else altogether. So be open to seeing basic shapes in all these images. Now, once you have this in place, keep switching between the original image and our grid. Then you'll notice that this bird is actually looking sideways. It's not looking completely sideways, it's looking at a 3/4 turn. So there's a little bit of the head you see on the other side of the beak. Beaks in birds are very important to get accurate, because before you know it, your sparrow will start looking like a parrot. So remember our history or study in history of Darwin's study of finches. I mean, the entire theory of evolution came about to his mind because of the study of the different beaks in finches. So we have to be very careful about a lot of things, but their differences can be very subtle. Whenever you're making the eye, always make the reflection, and I tend to also make a dark pupil in the center and then shade the rest of the eye. Even if it is the same darkness, you need to keep it separate. And there's usually a ring, there's a membrane around the eye, which is light. So try to keep that light as well. Is it visible? Yeah. And then move your hand very cautiously but freely around. And start shading. So in shading, it's good to shade according to a certain contour. So you will be able to tell the direction of the feathers. Like in animals, you are able to tell the direction of the fur, and try to shade in that direction. So that creates a contour line and more realism and more 3D is visible without really doing anything else. So here the feathers are pointing downward, here they're pointing sideways. Wherever you have white feathers, omit that space and jump to the next. Differentiate the colors by changing the pressure on your pencil. And in many places, it might help you to just draw lines instead of scribbling back and forth. At every point, allow your eyes to gauge distances. And you will need to make frequent adjustments to the shape of the bird. Now, once you come to this point, you might notice that you need to draw another wing. So look carefully at the reference image and your own image to measure visually how much space you need to leave between the end of the beak and the black patch, the white patch, and then put a wing there. Now go back to the grid. And at that point, you will notice that if this was a circle, this is the line that comes through the middle of the body, our wing starts somewhere over here. And it goes through and ends somewhere here. So you have to keep switching back and forth between the grid and the reference image without the grid. This is my horizontal line, and the back of the bird starts somewhere here. Are you able to see these features with respect to the grid that we've drawn? My bird is becoming very plump, I think. Now, as you come lower, many feathers, or the longer feathers, you will see more detail. Now, these places, spend a little extra time in trying to get the shape of these feathers right. You will have a shape and a shade to work on. So each feather, try to make it individually. Leave a little gap between them unshaded, as you see, and in some places there are these black lines, or black patches. Try to draw them just in those places. Don't draw them all over because you don't want it to look like a pattern. And some places where the feathers are not very distinct, don't draw any lines over there, leave it blank. Now, after you've drawn a large section of the bird, you'll start seeing whether or not your proportions are accurate. And at any point, if you feel that they are inaccurate, feel free to change them. As we fill up space, the space consumption data becomes more accurate. So, what I mean by that is that when you see a blank page, your estimate of what might be the distance between certain objects is usually a little less than what it lands up being in the end. So when you fill in color, if you've left extra space, then you realize that the distance that you had estimated is you overcompensated, over calculated for that space. And when you fill in stuff, you start realizing that you kept your markers pretty far and you might need to pull in those features closer to the area that you have finished sketching. How's it going? Are you getting it?
Not bad, I think, for a first attempt.
If you're done with the sparrow, I'd like to do a quick sketch of one of the raptors. So another way in which you can practice sketching of birds is maybe if you want to just observe this instead of drawing it with me, I want you to see the manner in which my pencil moves on paper and how I'm holding the pencil and what I'm attempting to make. So I'm just going to draw this and you can guess which bird it is. So I pretty much start off with, oh, 1 second, my app has just shut. Okay. Give me a second. Huh? Okay. So start off with some loose lines and start building shapes. Now, I'm not making a grid here as much as I'm just blocking out some shapes. And this is it's quite a fun exercise. We're not really trying to make the illustration accurate, but we're trying to move our hand in a sketchy manner. So the lines are just indications. You make a loose texture of maybe scallop-like shapes for the feathers, as opposed to the very clean shading that we were doing over here. Some dark patches, but scribbly. And also the feathers that we make can be all very scribbled. See? So it's a very graphic looking bird. And you can have fun with a whole lot of textures. This eventually can turn into a graphic image of the bird also. And give it just about 5 minutes or so, not more than that. All of these exercises in shading or sketching help you to understand proportion better. So the more you sketch on paper, the more you are able to see what your eye is seeing on paper. Making a loose line sketch is any day slightly easier than trying to make the perfect line in one shot. So this loose shading will really look fun and also very casual. But in the process, you will be getting a lot of insight, I would say, into how you are perceiving shapes and colors and textures and placement, proportion. And the more you do this, the better your proportioning starts becoming. All right. Now let's try making that tragopan.
Which one, sorry?
The tragopan, the head of the tragopan. Let me share the image.
The male one.
This one.
Yeah.
So I've deliberately chosen a small part so that we can focus on just the proportions of the head, beak, the wattle, and the different colors of feathers. Plus, these birds, the birds that have got light colored dots on them, can be a nightmare to paint. So let's see how we can do this. Now, if you have a white color pencil or a pen, this is the time to bring it out, but we'll bring it out a little later. Now here again, we have the same exercise of proportioning. You can start off with what looks like a circular shape over here. And it's always good to divide the circle into halves. That's very easy to do. So again, you have the eye in the top half hemisphere, but a little towards the left. And then from the top, this line actually goes almost horizontal and then turns sideways. The beak is at about a 4 o'clock angle from the center of the circle. And then the wattles can just be drawn at an angle which is, say, at 5 o'clock and then moving towards 4 o'clock, like so. The body of the bird starts from somewhere here. And then it goes down. From here at about 8 o'clock is where you will draw the brown feathers. And this is a weird shape. It's almost like the shape of a bird itself within the eye of the bird. If you look at it, it's pointing in the other direction. I'm sharing this image as well, so you can keep it handy. Okay, so this one we can make a reasonable size. And what we could also do is after we make the head of the bird, if you have masking tape, we can place masking tape and make a frame out of this picture. So leave a little more headspace than we see in the photograph. And start with a circle somewhere in the middle over here. Remember that there is the wattle has to go up at least half a circle width beyond this point. My circle is about 1.5 inches. So it's fairly large. That will give us nice room to make all the features. The shape of the eye is very distinct. It's not a round. It's slightly pointed towards the center, towards the front of the face. It's pinched. Then there's a dark patch. And there's a patch coming like so. And also going down to this 8 o'clock line, from where the brown part starts. Such an ugly texture it has, my God. Ugh.
I was just thinking the same thing, but I didn't want to say it. Like, oh, I'll bubbly.
No, it's so birds also sometimes can have very ugly features. But like Paru messaged me yesterday saying, are you doing reptiles today? Then I don't want to attend. And I fully understand because my daughter has such an aversion to reptiles. I mean, it's not paralyzing, but she can do without any exposure to reptiles if she can help it. So I told her.
Talk of reptiles also, I get shivers. It's not even like I don't even have to see the picture.
Yeah, but
It's only getting worse as I age, I feel. Maybe I
Oh.
wasn't so bad when I was
has nobody
now I can't.
suggested exposure therapy to you?
Well, never mind. I can live without.
That is the scariest.
Yeah, I don't have that much long to live now. Half my life is over. I don't need any exposure
I would-
therapy after this point.
I would have thought that is the surefire way to expedite the end of your life. It's a
Yeah, never mind. I don't want to go so fast, but
Hmm.
it's okay. I can live without it. I live in a city. No self-respecting reptile is going to come into a concrete jungle.
That is true. You have to just hope.
And as a family, we are not nature people, so it's fine.
Hmm.
My son says we are city folk. Let's just be city mice. Let's not try too much nature stuff. So,
No, there was one student that I had who would hate textures like these also, the wattle that we're making. So this is also very sensitive, huh? There's also
yeah.
there is
Also,
there is a name for this when there are certain textures which are made out of small parts that some people just
Huh.
cannot stand.
I don't like in designs or wallets or anything which has that snakeskin print or texture.
Yeah.
I don't like it. I mean, I can bear it. It's not like I can't, but I just don't like it at all.
You prefer to not have it.
I prefer to not have. I have a wallet which my daughter said, "How come you have this wallet? It's so ugly and it's got a horrible snakeskin texture." But my husband gave it to me, so I carry it.
Oh, so there are conditions under which you will
So
carry.
I told him, now you need to buy me a new wallet and please don't go anywhere near any snakeskin textures. He said, okay, I won't. But this bird, having said that, has such beautiful colors.
Okay. So those of you who have this paper tape, you can use this. My cats have been playing with this, so it's going to be a little ugly. But my advice is normally if when you want to use paper tape, unless you have a creative design that you're going to make in a specific area, always put the tape on after part of your drawing is done. Like as in this case, so that you can then decide on how much space you need exposed. Look over here, we can make this so tiny. Now, also another piece of advice is use paper tape only if you think you're going to use some kind of wash. If you are using tape, then you might as well put down a nice wash.
This particular bird will be nice to do in color and not bother with too much of the details also. If you don't
Yeah,
want
don't do too much texture.
Yeah. How no, in nature, all these male birds only are the ones which are prettier.
Yeah. It's very weird.
They're useless.
They should try that once in a while, and humans also. Let them wear the heels.
What,
and
make the male
makeup.
one, make the males prettier?
Well, no, they
At
can
least in
try. They can try to make
human-
themselves as pretty as women try to make themselves pretty. The stuff that women go through, my God. Try waxing. Just waxing is good enough, I think. Torture.
I think there are enough men waxing now, no?
Okay, now for the eye, very often the proportion of the eye can make or break the illustration. So be very careful. Look at the beak and look at the eye and the distance between. And if you're unsure, fill up that distance with a little bit of the texture. Now, this texture is quite distinct. So even if you make it in pencil, like that, it's just wiggly lines into each other. This could be a nice underlayer for the watercolor. So you don't really have to then make the texture in watercolor separately. The gray lines of the pencil suffice. So as you start filling the texture, you'll start seeing that the space you have allocated for the beak or for the eye will start reducing, or even this, the lower part of the wattle. I've got a very thick space here. Maybe I can reduce that. And see, the bottom part of my beak has come much further than it should be. So once you've drawn the line that you want, then you can erase the line that you don't want. Don't do it the other way around. Don't erase before making the corrected line, because then you have no reference and you'll end up making the new line in exactly the same place. Make a little highlight in the eye. Maybe make the highlight a little bigger than you see it. And do make that central pupil a little dark. It's not going to be visible, but just make it in any case. It's there on the bird, but it's hidden because the bird's eye, the whole eye is pretty dark.
I love that it has such distinct colors and it has such distinct demarcations of color.
Yeah.
Like nothing, it's a very, if I may say so, an easy to paint in that sense, because there's no muddying of colors. Like it's so clear, the lines.
Yeah. That's true. That's true.
That's like, I mean, it's literally like an artist's dream to paint.
This is something like maybe a 4-year-old is given to paint. This is the section that you paint blue. This is the section you paint orange, almost that kind.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, are we ready to paint? Do you need a minute or two?
I'm sorry, I've jumped ahead and I've started putting base colors.
Okay. So before we start painting the tragopan, I just want to explain one thing about painting in a little bit of three-dimensionality in the birds. I'm going to demonstrate a little bit on this raptor over here, which has got white feathers. Now, the tragopan does not have any white feathers, but this one does. And before you start painting the rest of the feathers, using a nice fat brush, there's a wash that you can give to these feathers here, which will make it look subtly three-dimensional. So this wash is just a very light gray wash. You can make it with our usual generic gray, that's ultramarine blue, burnt umber, and black. So just a little bit of all three colors, and you get this very watery gray shade. Using this shade, I just want you to see this. Paru, could you just look up?
Yeah.
Because this is quite important.
Yeah.
So many birds do have a white chest, and all you need to do is make sure you have very little paint. So don't take a very dark color and too much volume. And what you need to do is just press a gray color like that. It's very subtle. Can you see it? It's barely there. Press the brush so that it spreads out and only in a few places. So you start getting this subtle color. And later on, this is the color that looks like a more 3D or gives the bird its 3D-ness. So the colors that I've used are burnt umber. Oh my God, it's so faint. This is burnt umber. Black plus ultramarine. Now, for even the tragopan, if you look at the detail, there are certain shadows in a few places, and those shadows can be also marked with this color. So I can take this and put it strategically in a place like this, like underneath this wattle, where there's a shadow there, there's a fold here, which goes across all colors. And there's a fold here. So it's very subtle. And when you put the next color on top of it, it will just lend a dark shadow to it. Now, I've used a very dry-ish color. You'll see that it's dried up very fast. There's hardly a hint of wetness there. So even things like the beak, you can make the gray part like so, and then leave a little highlight on top. And then parts of the hair, which you want to leave blank, but not totally white, because white looks like white feathers. A slight gray will look like a subtle highlight. This is the color of a subtle highlight within a colored background. See this? Now we are also going to give a wash. So this is a good point to give a wash. After you have created all these subtle colors, you can give whatever wash you want. Maybe just a plain blue is also good, or even a green is fine. Or if you want, you can just do a red over here also, because it is there's a blue that comes out into it, and black, and the orange of the eye and the red of the wattle can then probably complement this. So I think I will go with a bright red. But I leave you to choose whichever color you want to make. Now, when you're making the wash, remember to rotate the paper and your book so that the color is constantly flowing downwards. Use gravity for this coloring. So washes are done by holding the book or paper at an angle, always at an angle. So like a 30, 40-degree angle. Your paint is fairly wet and you will flatten the brush and allow the paint to flow a little bit to the bottom of that section. And before your brush runs out of paint, load it one more time. And now because this color of the feathers on the top of the head is black, you can afford to go into that section a little bit so that you leave no blank spots. Keep adding color before it finishes. I'm going to bring my painting from this side towards this side. And as you come closer, maybe you can even change the brush. If you're not comfortable with the big fat brush. And dodge around your drawing. And pull all this color downward. As you come to the bottom, just pick it up and you're done. When you're giving a wash, avoid going back and forth in the same area too much because that will destroy the paper and you'll start seeing a little bit of the paper coming out. Now, while this is drying, we can start painting the rest of the face. At this point, it's a good idea to bring in a rough sheet so that you can test your colors. We have a little bit of orange here that goes into lemon yellow, that goes into a very bright green, which will be made, or sorry, turquoise, which you can make using lemon yellow and cerulean blue. And then use that bluish green color for the bright sections of the wattle. And then drop in a little bit of cobalt blue along this edge. So we have, if you want, you can just observe how I'm doing this and then you can do it for yourself. So we have orange. I'm going to hydrate all these colors and prepare them. Gamboge, I'm going to add towards the bottom as it transitions from orange to this bright green. And I'm making a little bit of this bright green over here with cobalt, cerulean blue and lemon yellow. And then of course, prep and ready the cake for the blue as well. Okay, so please observe, we have done color blending before. So I want you to see how this is done as well. Your color has to be slightly liquid. So imagine the consistency of cream or lotion. And then to this, just add a little more water so that there's a little extra flow. In this weather, this lotion consistency paint will dry up pretty fast. So you need to add a little more water. I'm going around the eye. Even the membrane around the eye is orange. And again, take a little extra out because then you can always bring that in with the black color. Press your brush down as you're painting this. Wipe your brush. Take a little bit of gamboge. To lighten the orange over here. So merge it with the orange. Take very little paint. And then lemon yellow, which is also over here a little bit. Going into this bluish green. So here it's a very watery bluish green. And then you can put a very watery cerulean blue itself. Okay, I'm shifting to cerulean blue, a watery cerulean blue now. Some dots in these places. I'm pressing the brush down so that I don't get just one uniform color that becomes very boring. Then a few dots on the top as I see them, and a little bit over here at the bottom of the beak. Now I'm going to wait for this to dry and then I'm going to paint the front part. All right, do you want to start?
Yeah, can you just, what are the color combinations you said
Yeah,
for the orange?
I'm going to make that over here. We have orange. That's the first color around the eye. Then gamboge. Then we have a little bit of lemon yellow. Then a mix of lemon yellow and cerulean blue. And then a very light cerulean blue itself. Remember to change your brush according to your comfort. Don't use the same brush for everything. If you're not sure of yourself when you make this color, and the area is too tiny, go for a smaller brush. Use maybe a number 1 or a number 2. So usually two things happen over here. Either you paint these too dark or too light. And a third thing is that the blend is not very smooth because maybe the color has dried or the color is too wet. In the event that the color is too wet, then the second color just overruns into the first color and everything just becomes one homogeneous, unrecognizable shade. If it is too dry, then you get a patch like this. So getting something too dry, at least it's fine. You can go over it. When you get something too wet, just let it do whatever it's doing. Nothing much we can do about it. Now for the little front part, I'm going to now add a little cobalt blue. So I'm making a second layer of cerulean. And this is just a flat paint to which I will add a little bit of cobalt blue along the inner edge. And in some places, strategically, I will leave the cerulean blue from the first layer untouched. And then move forward. Now for the red color of the bottle, we can use crimson directly. Now crimson is a slightly brighter color than you need over here, but it still works out as a better option than anything else. At best, what we can do is make it slightly watery in a few places towards the edge, like this. So whenever you're painting the edge, make the tip of the brush face the edge that you're painting. So you can control the line there. And then you can just spread that color. But always remember to load the brush before it goes completely dry. Now I've painted the blue slightly extra. So it's going to now give me a nice sharp edge here. And remember always, whenever you're going to the edge, you should be able to see that beyond the tip of your brush. Never paint with the edge on the inner side of the brush. It should always be on the outer side of the brush. Now here there's a highlight on the wattle. It's a little dark on the left side bottom. So it will be dark here. But on the right, it would be, here it's dark. So you can make this line over here fairly dark. This whole thing can be dark shade. And then wipe off the excess paint and with whatever little wetness you have in the brush, just pull the color to the right a little bit. So you get this nice lightness over here. All the dark shadows can be made with second layer of crimson. And if you have a nice light hand, you can make these subtle hair-like textures on the wattle itself also. The color below this can be orange and scarlet mixed. So start off with an orange here. And I think now we could have done this before the crimson, but nonetheless. We can mix it with scarlet. So here's a scarlet plus orange mix. For the back of the head, let me just put down these colors. So you at least know for reference what I've been using. We have cobalt blue, crimson, mix of orange and scarlet. Now the back of the head, we will use light red or burnt sienna, one of the two. Either of them is just as red. This is light red. And this can be done in 2 layers. So because it is feathers, distinct feathers, you can make a light layer first. Going into the black part just a little bit. And then increase the intensity of the color. And put it down in strokes. So the same kind of contour strokes that you would do for the sparrow.
What colors are these, Aditi? Light red and?
This is just light red. It's a very watery light red here, and then a more intense color as we go backwards. So when I'm making these lines, my brush is barely touching the paper. I just want you to see how this works. It's a very subtle line. So don't press the brush because you will end up making very fat line. Keep it very light and easy.
It's light red on light red, right? Or you mixed anything with the light red?
Light red on light red, correct.
And you've let it dry, or you're doing wet on wet?
This is just layer 1, so there was no drying at all. As I
Just
did,
damp, yeah.
yeah, so first layer was made slightly lighter and slightly longer. The second layer was made while it was wet, so in that sense, wet next to wet, let's say, not on wet. And then
Yeah, damp on.
yeah, more intense color beyond that. Now, after this is done, these are the more technical colors. Everything else is just black and gray. So here you can have a whole lot of fun. So you could probably take a fat brush and paint a lightish gray on this side and a deep black on the front. Ignore the dots, and there are some red patches here also. Just completely ignore them. So here's what we can do. A watery black in this section. A fatter brush would be good. And let it go into the plumes on the hair, on the head. So this is fairly wet. And as you come towards the right, you can start intensifying the black. And allow this nice merge to take place. Don't control this merge. Now, when you come close to the feathers that we want should look like feathers, starting from one end, carefully using a nice stroke, finish off that edge with strokes going into the existing feathers. This time the paint should be slightly thick. And the brush can be slightly thin. So I've brought all the paint towards this end, and I'm going to use a thin brush to make a very scratchy edge that almost looks like the feathers are peeking through. Now this must be a thick paint, not thin, because otherwise it will bleed into the orange and scarlet combination. We don't want bleeding. The same we can do here as well. Use the same thick black color. Because here, this also is going to look like a shadow of those feathers. Now beyond this point, everything is going to be thin lines and feathers. So I would paint the front of the head separately from the beak. And if you've turned your book around, when you're making the feathers on the head, please turn the book right side up so you know what you're doing. Over here, it will make sense if a few lines or sections remain white, unpainted. And also paint into the light red section. This edge is very clear. So use a thin pen brush if need be. Now, another tip is when you use your thin brush, take some color out in the palette to roll your brush in it. That way you can check how much pigment you have. And now with the thin brush, we can paint the eye. So there's a very thin line, a membrane around the eye. And it's not a very smooth line. So if your fingers are wobbly, then that's great. A straight line over there will make it look very artificial. Make a mix of black and burnt umber first and apply that on the eye. It's going to be a very deep brown color. So this is my strategy. I will put that color on top and then wipe the brush and spread it a little to the bottom. So there's a little shading that occurs. It's not seen in the photograph, but this makes the eye look a little more real in a painting. Often in paintings, we have to manipulate certain facts. In photographs, you don't really need to, but in paintings, it helps. Now, fill the eyeball with a little black central lens. The beak I am actually painting with a little bit of blue and black just on the top to differentiate the color between the beak and the feathers. So this is cobalt blue and black. And then while it is still wet, I'm going to make a little dark patch along the bottom. And then spread it with a slightly dry brush. Okay, so it's 12:35 now. There are a few things that we still need to do in this. Would you mind if we carry this on to next week? Because it'll take another 15-20 minutes. I want to show you how to make the subtle white
Yes.
on the feathers. And if you can get a white glass pencil or a pen like this, this is from Sino Uniball. So this,
No, the Brustro pens are very nice. The Brustro white pens, they don't dry up and they're really good. Or even the Sakura white gel pen.
whichever one, anything that can be opaque.
Yeah.
So try that. Paru, if you can just send those names on the group, then people who might be able to
Sure.
find this at a stationery
Because
store.
I bought so many Signo white pens and they have just dried up on
They
me.
dry up. Yeah.
Whereas I find the Sakura gel pen, I'll send a picture of what I have.
Yeah, that'll be nice. Even I can pick that up.
Those come in 3 different thicknesses and I've been using them now for over 6 months and they haven't dried.
Okay, wonderful. Maybe we can just get them.
And they stay white. They stay white.
Okay.
They
good.
don't like fade, you know.
Okay.
So it's nice to give highlights on watercolor.
Great. I have an opportunity.
Aditi, could you
Yeah.
I've struggled a lot with white pens, that's why.
Yeah, Amulya.
Could you guide me with the eye again?
Oh, yeah. Let me
So
just,
there's a little black around
yeah,
the orange eyelid.
yeah. There's a black ring of some membrane around the eye. And then the eye inside it. And that too is in a teardrop shape, pinched a little to the center. So I put a dark color on top, then wipe the brush. Just leave the highlight, put a dark color on top, wipe the brush, and then with the damp brush, spread the same color down in the lower area. And then once that dries, I've made this dark pupil or lens in the center so that it gets some color subtlety.
Okay, and that dark color is burnt umber and black.
Correct. So shall we continue this now next week?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you everyone. Next week, and I'm
Thank
going to do insects. Anyone has problems with insects? As a second part after we finish the bird. Let me know. Insects or maybe frogs. I can do frogs also. They're good. Okay. See you next week
Insects are-
then.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aditi. Bye.